The cold air was thick with tension as James sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the letter in his shaking hands. His heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst through his chest. He had done everything right, or at least he thought he had. He had lived in the United States for over 15 years, built a life, worked hard, and paid his dues. But none of that seemed to matter now. The letter was clear. He was being deported. James wasn't just any man. He was a father, a husband, and a pillar in his community. He had no violent record, no trouble with the law. Yet, here he was, facing the terrifying possibility of being torn away from everything he knew and loved. His wife, Lisa, was in the next room, trying to stay strong for their 2 young kids. But he could hear the stifled sobs when she thought no one was listening. With nowhere else to turn, James made a desperate decision. He would appeal directly to the most powerful man in the country. He grabbed his phone, hit record, and with raw emotion he spoke. "Mr. President, I'm begging you. Please don't let this happen to me. I am not a criminal. I am not a threat. I am a father, a husband, a hard-working man. Please spare me from this deportation." The video spread like wildfire, touching the hearts of thousands. Some rallied behind him, urging the government to reconsider his case. Others weren't as sympathetic, arguing that the law was the law. But as the days passed, James could do nothing but wait, his fate hanging in the balance. Would President Trump see his plea? Would he intervene? Or was James already out of time? His phone buzzed with a notification, one that could change everything. But was it the answer he had been praying for, or was it the final confirmation of his worst fear? James hesitated before looking at his phone. His hands were damp with sweat, his heart racing as if it already knew what was coming. He took a deep breath and swiped to open the notification. It was a news alert. His story had made headlines. "Man pleads to President Trump to stop his deportation," the title read. His video had been shared by thousands, reaching people he never imagined would see it. Some left comments filled with support, others with harsh words. But none of it mattered as much as one question: was anyone in power actually listening? Lisa walked into the room, her eyes red and tired. She had been up all night, scrolling through the responses, searching for hope. "Maybe this is good," she said softly, sitting beside him. "Maybe someone will step in." But James could hear the doubt in her voice. He wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that this wasn't the end. His mind drifted back to how it all started. He had come to the US nearly 2 decades ago, leaving behind a country that offered him nothing but struggle. He worked endless hours, took any job he could find, and slowly built a life. When he met Lisa, everything seemed to fall into place. They got married, had 2 beautiful children, and for a while, he felt like he had finally found a place where he belonged. But now, with one letter, all of it was at risk. The hardest part wasn't the fear of starting over somewhere unfamiliar. It was the thought of leaving his family behind. His children were born here. They only knew this country as home. How could he look them in the eyes and tell them he might not be here tomorrow? Just as James was about to check his phone again, a knock at the door made him freeze. He exchanged a nervous glance with Lisa. It was too late for visitors. His heart pounded as he slowly stood up. Was this the news he had been dreading? Or was it something even worse? James hesitated before reaching for the doorknob. Lisa stood behind him, gripping his arm, her breath uneven. The knock came again, more urgent this time. He swallowed hard and slowly pulled the door open. A man in a dark suit stood on the porch, his face unreadable. James's stomach clenched. Was this it? Was this the moment his life would change forever? "Mr. Carter," the man asked, his voice firm but not unkind. James nodded, barely able to find his voice. The man held out a folder. "I need to speak with you." Lisa stepped closer, her fingers tightening around James' hand. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I'm with an advocacy group." "We've been following your case," the man said, lowering his voice as if someone might be listening. "There's been a lot of attention on your story. People are talking. We might have a chance to fight this, but you have to move fast. James felt his knees weaken. He had spent days drowning in fear, convinced that no one would help. And now, out of nowhere, someone was standing at his door offering him a sliver of hope. But was it real? Could he trust this man? Fight how? James asked carefully. The man sighed, glancing around before stepping inside. Legal challenges, media pressure. There are people pushing for a case review. The government is watching the reaction, but we need to make more noise. We need to make them see you as a person, not just another name on a list. James sat down, his mind racing. The idea of putting himself out there even more terrified him. He had already seen the ugly side of the internet, comments from people who wanted him gone, who didn't care about his life or his family. But if this was his only chance, did he have a choice? Lisa knelt beside him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. James, if there's even the smallest chance, she whispered. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed again. Another notification, another flood of messages, and then a name he never expected to see. Someone in power had just spoken his name. But what did it mean for him? James's fingers trembled as he picked up his phone. His eyes scanned the screen, heart pounding in his chest. A government official, someone close to the administration, had just mentioned his case in a press briefing. Reporters were asking questions. His story had reached the highest levels of power. Lisa clutched his arm, reading over his shoulder. James, this is huge, she whispered, but there was uncertainty in her voice. What do they say? James hesitated before playing the clip. The grainy video loaded, showing a room full of journalists. A reporter's voice rang out, sharp and direct. There's a man, James Carter, who released a video pleading with President Trump to stop his deportation. His story has gone viral. Is the administration aware of this? Is there any chance for intervention? There was a pause. A tense, heavy silence. Then the official at the podium adjusted his microphone. The president is aware of Mr. Carter's situation. At this time, we cannot comment on any individual cases. However, we are committed to enforcing immigration laws fairly and justly. James felt the air leave his lungs. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. His fate was still hanging in the balance. The man from the advocacy group leaned forward. This means we have a shot. They don't want bad press. If we push harder, if we get more voices behind you, they might be forced to act. Lisa shook her head. But what if it backfires? What if we make too much noise, and they just decide to make an example out of him? James stared at the floor, his mind spinning. His video had already reached places he never imagined. If he stepped back now, would it make a difference? Or was it already too late? Before he could answer, the door burst open. It was his neighbor, a close friend. He was out of breath, his face pale. James, turn on the news. Right now. James grabbed the remote with shaking hands. The screen flickered on, and his own face filled the television. Below it, a headline in bold letters. Asterisk White House responds to James Carter's plea asterisk. Lisa gasped. The room was dead silent. James could hear his own heartbeat. Everything was about to change. But was it for better or worse? James's pulse thundered in his ears as he turned up the volume. The news anchor's voice was steady, but the words sent a chill through his body. Breaking tonight, new developments in the case of James Carter, the man pleading with President Trump to stop his deportation. Sources inside the administration suggest a decision may come sooner than expected. But in a shocking twist, new information has surfaced that could complicate his case. James exchanged a panicked glance with Lisa. What are they talking about? She whispered. He shook his head, unable to look away from the screen. The broadcast cut to a reporter standing outside a government building. Officials are now reviewing James Carter's immigration file, and there are claims that a discrepancy has been found in his paperwork. If confirmed, this could mean immediate removal with no chance of appeal. James felt the air squeeze from his lungs. No, that's not possible, he murmured. He had followed every rule, every requirement. He had done everything the right way. Lisa grabbed her phone, frantically scrolling. There's already a storm online. Some people saying it's a mistake, others saying you lied on your application. Her voice cracked with frustration. James, this could turn everything against us. The advocacy worker stood up, his expression unreadable. This could be political, he said carefully. When cases get this much attention, some people start looking for ways to discredit them. It wouldn't be the first time. James felt a mix of anger and fear twist inside him. Was someone trying to shut his case down? Or had he unknowingly made a mistake years ago, one that was now coming back to destroy everything? Then his phone rang. Unknown number. His stomach churned. Was it an official call? A warning? He looked at Lisa, who nodded, eyes filled with worry. He answered, his voice barely above a whisper. Hello. A pause, then a low, serious voice. Mr. Carter, you need to listen very carefully. You don't have much time. James gripped the phone tighter, his breath shallow. Who is this? He asked, his voice barely steady. The man on the other end spoke quickly. That paperwork issue. It's not a mistake, it's intentional. Someone wants you out, and they're pulling strings to make it happen fast. You have less time than you think. James's skin went cold. Who? Why? Can't say over the phone, but if you want a chance to fight this, you need to act now. Check your email. You'll find something there that proves what I'm saying. The line went dead. James turned to Lisa, his face pale. Something's not right. Someone is trying to bury me. Lisa was already refreshing his inbox. There's an email, but I don't recognize the sender. She clicked it open, and what they saw made James's head spin. Attached was an internal memo, a document stamped with official seals, but the contents made his stomach drop. It detailed an order to expedite his removal before public pressure could force reconsideration. The advocacy worker leaned in, eyes narrowing. If this is real, it means someone inside the system is actively working against you. James clenched his fists. So, what do we do? Before anyone could answer, the TV flashed with a live update. The president himself had been asked about James's case. His response was clipped. We're looking into it. No commitment, no promise, just enough to leave James dangling. Then, another twist, his lawyer called. James, we just got word. There's been an emergency review on your case. But here's the catch. They're moving your hearing up. You have less than 24 hours to prove why you should stay. Lisa gasped. That's impossible. How can we be ready? James exhaled sharply. We don't have a choice. As the clock ticked down, his case became a battlefield. Lawyers scrambling, activists rallying, media swarming. And just when it seemed like the decision was close, another notification appeared on his screen. A message from a private account, just 3 words. Asterisk, check your past. Asterisk. James stared at the message, his mind racing. Asterisk, check your past, asterisk, what did that mean? He had lived in the US for nearly 2 decades, done everything by the book. But as he sat there, something surfaced in the back of his mind. An old application years ago, when he first applied for legal status. He had relied on an immigration consultant, someone he barely remembered. Could a mistake from back then be coming back to haunt him now? Lisa was already on it, digging through old files. James, look at this, she whispered, pointing at a document buried deep in a folder. His original paperwork, only something was off. A small discrepancy, barely noticeable, a date that didn't match. James felt his chest tighten. This isn't my mistake. He looked up at the advocacy worker. Can we use this? His lawyer called back just in time. This could be what we need. If we prove this error wasn't yours, we might have a case. The next 24 hours blurred into chaos, phone calls, last-minute filings, media pressure mounting. And then the moment of truth. James stood in the courtroom, his hands gripping the table as the judge reviewed the new evidence. Minutes felt like hours. Then finally, the words James had been desperate to hear. Based on the new information, this court grants a temporary stay of removal while further review is conducted. Relief crashed over him. It wasn't a full victory, not yet, but it meant he wasn't being ripped from his family overnight. It meant a chance. Lissa burst into tears, grabbing his hand, and for the first time in days, James allowed himself to breathe. Outside, cameras flashed, microphones were shoved in his face. "James, what happens now?" a reporter asked. He looked at his wife, his kids, his lawyer, then back at the crowd. "Now," he said, his voice steady, "now we keep fighting, because this isn't just about me. It's about all the people like me whose stories don't make the news." And with that, he walked away, not as a man defeated, but as a man still standing.